Welcome back. Well, now that we've shown you Jody and Jason's 2 top 5 lists, let's dive a little deeper into the subject and really break these down with none other than Jody and Jason, our high school experts. But we'll start in North Dakota with Jody Norstead. So Jody, you take a look at lists like this, and of all the great QBs in North Dakota, you have to narrow it down to 5. How hard was this list to make, and who got left off that might deserve more recognition?
Yeah, it was a challenge, Kelly. I had in the neighborhood of about 15 quarterbacks that I felt deserved to be in this conversation. Some of the names that come to mind are a lot of the smaller school guys. Wyatt Harless from Wyndmere-Lidgewood does it all for the Warbirds. At 6'2", he has really good size. He's a 3-year starter for the Warbirds and has had some big games. They score a lot of points down there. A couple of weeks ago, he finished with 2 passing TDs, a rushing score, and 2 pick-sixes on defense. I look at him and another 9-man player like Jaden Mitzel from Shiloh Christian, just a sophomore, but he has his team off to a 4-0 start. And listen to this, of his 23 completions, 13 of them have went for touchdowns. He plays linebacker on defense. Those guys are good two-way players. Minot's Creighton Rudolph, Caden Krause, Mandan deserves to be in the conversation. Might be some hidden gems out there too that I don't even know about, so feel free to shoot me a message. But I think the top 5 is a pretty good group.
So looking at your top 5, Jody, let's kind of break that down. Why those top 5? Kind of go through your list and tell us about them.
Well, let's start with that number 1 spot, and I think it's simple with Andy Grabdahl. Kelly, there were question marks coming into this season for West Fargo, and he has single-handedly dominated some teams with his improvisation, his speed, and of course his arm. He passed for over 300 yards in a win over Bismarck and ended up with 381 yards of offense. That's the second most all-time on West Fargo's single-game record list. He's done all of this against ranked opponents every week. Number 2 was interesting for me. I dipped into the smaller schools for Jacob Delvo. This is a young man that passed for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns last year in a first-round playoff win over Carrington. Delvo was first-team All-State last year and has a great target in All-State wide receiver Anthony Economy, among others. He throws a pretty ball, and he can throw it really accurate down the field as well. The rest of the top 5, Huckstra is a returning All-State kid who looks much more confident in the pocket this season. He led Legacy to that come-from-behind win, too, over Cheyenne, 44-42. Tanner Du Bois is interesting. He made 36 tackles as a linebacker last year for Fargo South. New head coach Tyler Kozel comes in, opens up the QB competition for the Bruins, and Du Bois snatched it up right away. The former linebacker can throw. He leads the EDC in passing yards and is tied for the touchdown lead with 7. His receivers, pretty darn good too. Meanwhile, Cole Gendrew for St. Mary's is one of the top dual threats in the state and has been since he was a freshman. He comes in at number 5.
All right, great stuff, Jody. We'll get back to you in a second, but first, we take it to South Dakota with Mr. Jason Andera. So let's talk about your picks, Jandy. Kind of similar to what I asked Jody, but I feel like every week we have some QBs putting up a lot of great numbers. How did you narrow it down to 5, and maybe who could have been on the list that didn't make it?
I'll tell you what, I've had this question on my mind for the last 48 hours. There are some amazing 9-man quarterbacks putting up huge numbers like Bryce Jasinski and Trey King, a couple of guys off the top of my head that haven't had the opportunity to show their body of work in several years, like Isaac Struck and Carter Lohr and Brady Dannenbring, who are just first-time starters this year. They might be in that list if they had the opportunity. There's some tremendous athletes out there like Hunter Headley and some really good up-and-coming quarterbacks too who maybe are not ready for this list, but you can tell they're going to be top 5 quarterbacks. It's just not definitive. Right now, it's just a good way to start the conversation, and these are the 5 I came up with.
Definitely not definitive, but you do have Peyton Zabel at number 1, a front runner, and then after that, a lot of talent. So kind of talk about why that order.
Oh, this is very, very hard. So going through this list, I really could be swayed either way. These athletes are all very, very top-notch elite athletes, and it really depends on the criteria that you use. There's winning, pure talent, future potential, and I used a combination of all 3 of those traits to come up with these 5. You've got Giles, Johansson, McCants. They were all state champs as underclassmen, and then you've got Zabel and Hunter, who really project well at the next level because of their size, mobility, and arm strength. An interesting fact, by the way, both Peyton Zabel and Hunter Karst, their grandparents are both from Selby, South Dakota, and they kind of grew up playing together since they were maybe 5-year-olds. So 2 very impressive quarterbacks. So that's a reason I came up with those 2 as next level guys. But number 1, Peyton Zabel, I mean, he has it all. You check any kind of list on what you want in a quarterback, Peyton Zabel has it. 6'6", stands in the pocket. He can scramble for a first down if you need him to. He is super smart and really can run an offense as good as anybody can. And I believe that he probably has the fewest weaknesses of anybody in this bunch, and that's kind of what you have to go down to. McCants might be the best of the bunch as far as actually throwing the ball, and Johannesson, he might end up being the most winningest one out of this group, and then Giles might have the best stats. So it depends what criteria you use. I used a little bit of them all, and I came up with Peyton Zabel at number 1.
Well, Jandy, you talk about criteria, you talk about what you want in a quarterback. So Jody, we'll bring you that back in for this one, but what makes a good high school quarterback? Jody, what do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I think experience is kind of a little bit overblown because some of these guys will come in their freshman or as a first-year starter. You look at Tanner DuBois, a guy that didn't start last year as a quarterback, was playing linebacker. He comes in and he can throw pretty well. So I think it comes down to more so athleticism, confidence, and smarts, especially at that quarterback position. You're having to kind of break down defenses, timing. You kind of have to know everyone's position, and that's one of the things Chris Clemens, legacy head coach, told me about Jason Huckstra. He's just a guy that really knows where everyone has to be on the field on every play. So smarts, it really comes down to an athleticism because a lot of these guys are asked to make plays on the run, something that maybe aren't asked to do at the NFL level, but in high school, you need to have a pretty good running quarterback to just kind of create that different dimension.
Jody, I have to add to that. You're right. They have to have the smarts, but you have to have the opportunity too. And some people go to schools where they're the number 2 guy and they have to wait until their senior year and you don't put the career stats up so you don't get on lists like this. So you have to have that opportunity and you have to have a system that fits which is so important in Peyton Zabel's case because Coach Steve Steele loves to throw the ball 50 times. And in West Fargo last year, we saw Gravdall's stats not quite as good because they relied so much on Chase Teichen and that big front line. This year, he has the opportunity and boom, he vaults to number 1 on your list.
Yeah, I agree with you. The system has to be there. And if you have a run-first team and a coach that kind of just has it in his mind, we're going to run the ball down their throats, quarterback's not going to get many opportunities. It's going to be hard to get on the radars of college teams. You're going to have to really show up in camps and stuff like that to kind of deliver what coaches are looking for.
Well, and you talk about playing at the next level, and of course, you got to be athletic to play quarterback, and you got to be smart, but you get to the next level, and it doesn't matter D1, 2, or 3, everyone's an athlete, so that's when your smarts really have to set you apart, especially if you want to come in and make an impact as a freshman or a redshirt freshman. So a lot of things going into playing quarterback, but I think you guys covered them all, so great insight. Thank you guys so much.
We could never play it, right?
That's right.
You could. I'm sure you were great. You were a center, Jody. You accounted for a lot. All right, great insight, guys. Thank you. Remember, you can catch all the highlights from these top QBs and their teams every Friday on Varsity Sports Live. That starts at 10:30 p.m. right here on Midco SN. When we come back, it's time for Coach Talk. Midco SN's Carla Metz goes over this past weekend's game with Augie's Jerry Olszewski. Stay tuned.
Midco Sports Tonight, presented by Avera.